right now. But basically, that side of the island is what we don't know a lot about yet, other than, boy, has it got to be really bad. Kingston, the capital, which is where about half the people live, they mostly got tropical storm winds. So hopefully that'll mean that the airport is able to reopen in pretty good order once the water goes down. That'll be key to getting supplies in and out and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of need. There's going to be a lot of help. And I just don't know right now, if someone were to ask me, what are the biggest impacts? We know it's bad, but I just don't know what to tell them in terms of what the devastation is like yet. We'll probably need to wait until the next couple of days.
Yeah, you make a good point about Kingston. Tropical storm force winds, probably really bad storm surge because they were on the eastern side of the storm. But you saw some of those pictures and videos where people were like, it doesn't look that bad. And it's like, well, you see the water looks insane, but yes, the winds and things like that, maybe the trees are they don't think of tropical storm force winds as being able to be classified with a Category 5, but that's nowhere near the storm made landfall. So storm surge on the eastern side.
It's weird that, the surge is probably really bad, and the airport's surrounded by water on both sides, so that's not good. But kind of the weird thing about this is, as strong as the storm is, the hurricane force winds were so compact toward the center. So Jamaica's 140 miles wide. The hurricane force winds were only on less than half of it. So that's really kind of remarkable that it was, so compact like this. And as it goes farther north, it'll probably expand outward and that wind field will get bigger, which is what we're familiar with a lot more up in North Carolina.
Yeah, I would imagine, too, because the storm rapidly intensified and it went from like a tropical storm, basically less than 2 days ago, it probably didn't have as much time as it could have to grow the wind field, even though the compactness, of the storm remained. But if that had gotten more time over open ocean, it could have remained a Category 5, but it could have gone through multiple eye wall replacement cycles and then grown the wind field. So that definitely is like a small sliver of positivity, I guess, when it comes to where the storm made landfall.
Well, and it picked up speed, too. So yesterday it was moving at about 2 miles per hour. Today, at one point, it was moving 8 to 9 miles per hour, which is still not that fast, but it's 4 times as fast. So if you consider this, if it hadn't picked up that speed, you would have had those eye wall conditions maybe instead of 4 hours, that would have been 16 hours. So there is a help in the forward motion. But gosh, it's going to be pretty bad, I think. So.
And then, of course, we'll be keeping an eye on eastern Cuba overnight and then eventually the islands. Tim, thanks for being here for another great live weather impact show. And Brad, we'll see you back here, same time, same place tomorrow. Our thoughts and prayers, of course, are with the people of the islands being impacted.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being with us here for Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We'll be together for the next couple of hours. We do have a feed we're watching from right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have the school district, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, discussing artificial intelligence, obviously a big topic of discussion for districts across the nation. We've got the policies kind of being laid out. Leaders are speaking. Let's listen in.
Involved as in terms of infield, just to try and get
Committee's recommendation that the AI policy be reviewed annually to determine whether any updates are necessary. The policy committee met and considered this new policy at our September 10th, 2025 meeting and voted to recommend approval by the full board.
Mr. Rankin, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Are there any other comments?
I just have a brief comment. I'm super excited about this policy. I think it's the beginning of something hopefully very innovative and something that'll propel us to the next level. I will say, as someone that works in corporate, has a career of over 10 years, we're using AI, we're being encouraged to use AI, we openly use AI, and it's just really important that our students are prepared for that. And AI is not going to take your job, but people that know AI and know how to use AI are going to take your job. And so I truly believe that, and I'm excited for this, and I think it's really cool that CMS is taking this step. It can be scary, there's lots of risk involved, and we're going to be very aware of it, we're very on top of it, but I think this is a very net positive thing. This is a great equalizer. This is going to be very helpful for those that are learning English, that want to better their communication skills. I mean, there's so many great things that this can unlock. So I'm just really excited, and I think it's really cool that the board supports this. And that's it. I'm done. Sorry. Talking.
Any other comments?
I'll just echo it. I think it's one of those things. I'm glad we're on the leading edge for our children, including my own children here, as someone who's also in corporate America. Isn't necessarily replacing jobs, but it is making us more efficient. It also allows you to be a more critical thinker. Just like when search engines came around, people were scared of them and how they worked. I think it is only going to behoove us to set our children up in this county for the world that they're going to jump into, which this is going to be a critical function in it.
I want to echo my fellow board members. I'm very, very excited about this. I have had, my master's degree is in online teaching and learning, and so I've used a version of technology and AI for the last, I don't know, almost 10, 15 years now. And so I'm very, very excited to have this policy in place where our teachers can start learning how to use AI as a tool in their classroom, and then eventually it trickles down to our students using AI to further their studies. So I'm really excited to see what CMS is leading this in AI development in schools, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
All right, I think we're ready to call for the vote. So all those in favor of the motion to create policy O-AIU artificial intelligence, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. So the motion carries. There being no other regular business for this evening, however, we did not complete our items for closed session, so I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to prevent the disclosure of personal information that is privileged, confidential, and not a public record, as outlined in sections 115C-319 and 115C-321 of the North Carolina General Statutes.
So move.
Moved by Witherspoon, second by Klein. All those in favor? All right, we'll now go into closed session. That's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
It's easier to say Klein.
All right, folks, so we were able to catch kind of the tail end of that discussion and following vote by leaders there at CMS on a specific artificial intelligence policy. We've been talking about this at length, how the district has been efforting, making certain guidelines about AI use in schools, and we'll kind of reiterate that the district has shared that AI is supposed to strengthen, not replace staff members in the district, and also they feel like it's going to be their stance to best educate students on how to use AI responsibly, not just in the education fields, but also any sort of following career fields that these children might engage with. So Essentially, we see this policy talking about how AI use will be in the classroom and how it might be used on an administrative level as well. And we have more information on this coming for you tonight on the news at 11 as you keep it here on WCNC+. With that, we're going to go ahead and turn to an earlier briefing today. As we mentioned during our early evening newscasts, we are in day 28 of the ongoing government shutdown. At this point, we have states now bracing for the potential of these SNAP benefits to run dry starting November 1st and are looking for ways to kind of supplement that, if you will. Today, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster made an announcement on how the state is making moves in order to ensure that South Carolinians do not go hungry during this period of time. Let's listen into his announcement.
We're ready for this. We're ready to go. We're wide open, and all we need is people to step forward. Any other comments?
And now this is day 2 of dreary.
Okay.
I'll squeeze in.
Is everybody happy with their spot? Can y'all see everybody all right? Well, y'all, thank you for coming out and welcome to the Emergency Management Division. Some of you have been here before. We have a number of people here that you've seen in other places. Senator Jeff Zell is here up from Clarendon and Sumter. Priscilla Elliott from Golden Harvest. Georgia Miarton from the Central Community Foundation. She's the president. Harvest Hope Food Bank, Aaron Rowe. Low Country Food Bank, President and CEO Nick Osborne, and I missed somebody in there. Also Tony Catone, Department of Social Services, Leon Lott, the State Guard Commander, also the Sheriff of Richland County, as all of you know. We're here to address the needs of the people of our state and their safety during this time of trial when the food for a lot of people has been cut off by the dysfunction in Washington. We wish they could pass that resolution to just keep spending money like they have been for these kind of things and debating other questions at other times, but they've chosen so far not to do that. So that means that for these types of things, we are once again left to ourselves, which we are prepared to meet, and it's a good thing. As y'all know from many times we've been at this podium in this building during emergencies, some terrible emergencies threatening death as well as destruction, South Carolina always pulls together. We've got a great team. We've worked together. It's a highly experienced team. It's a highly motivated team. And it's a team that cares very much about the people of South Carolina. The one fund is administered by the General Carolina Community Foundation located in Columbia. The fund was established, you'll remember, in 2015 following Hurricane Joaquin, when Governor Haley set it up and asked the South Carolina, it to serve as South Carolina's coordinated philanthropic response to disasters such as this one, as well as hurricanes, other storms, and fires. The 1SC fund has been activated in hurricanes Matthew, Florence, Helene, as well as COVID, as you remember. 99%, that is 99% of every dollar donated to the 1SC fund is granted to nonprofits, that is charities that provide local assistance in South Carolina. The remaining 1% goes for outreach and study and research and reporting and administration and the oversight of grant contracts. The Central Carolina Community Foundation has activated the 1SC fund to provide emergency monetary support, that is money, funds, to food banks and local feeding partners statewide during the suspension of the SNAP program. We don't know how long that's going to be. We'll address that in a few minutes about how quickly we can respond. Now, again, this is for money, for checks, for contributions to charities. And we're asking you to do this. This money that goes to the 1SC fund will go directly to the food banks that we have that have been established for years all over South Carolina. We have a presence of food banks in every single county. All of this can be found online. We have 900 food banks and food pantries in the state, and they're broken up into 4 regional groups: the Golden Harvest Food Bank, the Harvest Hope Food Bank, the Low Country Food Bank, and the Second Harvest Food Bank of Metro Lima. Also, the second part of the effort is I've asked the State Guard to participate. The State Guard has men and women all around our state that can respond to disasters, that can help in a variety of ways, and they will be there to assist in whatever way they can at these locations during this time. So we really do have a great team. And what we're asking is, we know people give regularly, some very generously, to charities, food banks, all these various charities all over the state. We want to encourage you to keep doing that. But this money that comes into 1SC fund will be used only for this effort and having the food and other supplies and things that are available at these food banks all over the state. All this can be found online, and we'll have questions in a little while. Georgia?
Thank you. Governor, thank you for calling on us at Central Carolina Community Foundation to activate the 1SC Fund, which, as you said, was created in partnership with the governor's office 10 years ago. I do want to say very clearly that South Carolinians know how to help their neighbors in times of crisis. Most recently, we saw that with Hurricane Helene. That was the largest activation of the 1SC Fund. As context, that raised over $6 million. I want to say that today because we need people to step up and give in ways that they have never given before. We need our corporate partners and other foundations, philanthropy, to come together in a unified way to make sure that 550,000 people in this state who will not have access to their food benefits on November 1st have the food resources they need when they turn to their local food pantries and food ministries and food banks. As you said, Governor, there is a network of hundreds upon hundreds of people who show up every day to volunteer, to serve, to bring food donations, food products. But our food banks are short of the food resources that they need right now. And that's where the 1SC Fund comes into play. We are here to raise those dollars and make grants as quickly as possible. Every dollar that comes into the 1SC Fund, as you said, 99% will go right back out into local nonprofits here in South Carolina, including the large food distribution centers that you see their leaders standing here with us today. The 1SC Fund starts at zero. We don't have a reserve of dollars waiting to be deployed. Today, we are opening this fund so that you can give. We're opening it because the need is great, and we urge you to go to 1SC, make a cash contribution, mail in a check, give by credit card, or contact us if you'd like to make a gift in another way. We appreciate you, Governor, Team SC. We're so grateful for the nonprofits working day in and day out to meet needs, not only in times of crisis like this, but year-round. Thank you to our food banks, and thank you to the volunteers, the givers, the philanthropists in our community who step up every day and in times of crisis like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. And I'd like to note one thing. Usually when we're here with these meetings and briefings, we are speaking about a disaster that we know is going to come. Well, this is a disaster that may come, but this is a disaster unlike the others that we can avoid. And we can do that by doing what we are prepared to do, and that's all the citizens working together to help those who need the help, who need food. Thank you. And Aaron Rowe, Harvest Hope Food Bank.
Thank you. My name is Erin Rowe. I'm the CEO of Harvest Hope Food Bank. We are the largest food bank in South Carolina, covering a 20-county footprint from the upstate all the way down to that PD corridor. Thank you so much, Government Masters, for hosting today. When I think about what we're about to approach and face, I am going back to Hurricane Helene, because that was a great testament of people coming together. South Carolinians do take care of each other, and that's what we're calling on right now. A lot of times the perception is food banks are funded by the state. We actually don't get funding from the state. We are 100% philanthropically driven, so we can only provide the food that is given to us and the support that is given to us. When we're looking at the shutdown, we are actually at a critically low food point right now. That typically happens this time of year, going into winter months, going into the holidays. So our shelves are pretty bare across all three of my warehouses in Greenville, Florence, and Columbia. So we are actively looking for food resources. To purchase food is a 2 to 3 week lead time to get that tractor trailers of food into our facilities. So I just want everybody to understand this isn't a light switch I can flip on tomorrow and fill up all three of my warehouses. To address the 550,000 people that are going to be needing assistance in about a week's time. So we do ask that everybody comes together and that we do take care of our neighbors. This is a moment for us to step up because people need to eat. So I appreciate you hosting this today, and I'm looking forward to us working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin Rowe. Nick Osborne, Low Country Food Bank.
Once again, folks, a briefing from state leaders in South Carolina as they are activating the 1SC Fund. As you can see, the state's philanthropic response to disasters started several years back as hurricane response, but is pivoting now, as we can see, to the ongoing government shutdown. Yourfoundation.org is the website to give your donation if you would like to help. And as you also heard, State Guard is going to be assisting. This is an all-volunteer group, an arm of the South Carolina National Guard. They'll be helping with food distribution. More on our website, WCNC.com. Time for a quick break, folks. We'll be back in 2 minutes. On the other side, potentially a live look at the Senate floor, because we are seeing that right now on our feeds. As we mentioned, shutdown's still going on. There was an unsuccessful vote today, but discussions are still continuing tonight. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We were kind of teasing you with the potential of going to the Senate floor. I'll just let you know, moments ago, they basically recessed for the day. They'll be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll see what discussions lay out on the government shutdown front and other topics in the morning. We do want to let you know, regarding the shutdown, we have several attorneys general who have banded together, including North Carolina's Attorney General Jeff Jackson, in a lawsuit against federal officials over contingency funds. These are essentially emergency funds that the North Carolina Attorney General and others believe that the federal government could deploy potentially in this case to keep SNAP benefits going after November 1st. So let's listen to the Attorney General's announcement on that lawsuit today.
County, in terms of per capita recipient for SNAP right now, is McDowell. We all know what happened to McDowell this time last year with respect to Helene by Jonathan Capworth, Chief of Staff, NCDHHS.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Attorney General Jackson, for your important attention to our state's SNAP program. Right now, more than 1.4 million North Carolinians rely on SNAP benefits to help put food on the table. These are working families, children, older adults, veterans, people with disabilities, people who depend on this program to put access to healthy food on their table. Because of the ongoing federal government shutdown, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has directed NCDHHS to suspend the issuance of November SNAP benefits. Every month, SNAP provides between $230 and $250 million in food benefits in our state. Without these funds, over 600,000 households could be left wondering how they'll find groceries next month. 4 in 5 North Carolina families participating in SNAP have either a child, a senior, or an adult with a disability. More than 580,000 children benefit from the SNAP program in North Carolina. And more than 80% of the people receiving SNAP in North Carolina are working. More than 80% of the people receiving SNAP benefits in North Carolina are working. This delay hits our small towns and rural communities especially hard. 1 in 6 rural North Carolinians depend on SNAP. And when funding is delayed, local grocery stores, farmers, and small businesses all feel it. In many communities, SNAP is one of the strongest lifelines in supporting both families and local economies. Now, to the individuals and families that rely on SNAP, we know that this situation creates anxiety for you. No one should have to worry about whether they can feed their children or their loved ones. We are working hard to do what we can to mitigate this impact on you and keep you informed. Here's what we want people to know right now. Continue to apply and renew your SNAP benefits. County DSS offices are open and processing applications to prevent backlogs when funding resumes. Any funds already on your EBT card are still available for use. You can check your balance on the app, website, or calling the number on the DHHS website. And if you or your family are in immediate need of food, please call 211 to be connected with local resources. You can find all of this information and more on the DHHS website at ncdhhs.gov/shutdown. We know that this is a stressful and uncertain time for many families, and we are grateful to our partners across the state, including the Attorney General, for working with us to keep North Carolinians informed and supported while we await federal action. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Pringle.
Thank you, Attorney General, for having us. Good afternoon. I'm Ron Pringle, President and CEO of Interfaith Food Shuttle, serving 7 counties in central and eastern North Carolina. Every day, our team sees more and more families standing in food lines who never imagined they would be there. Many of them working, sometimes 2 jobs, but with the rising cost and shrinking safety nets, their one missed paycheck from hardship. And with the shutdown, that hardship isn't looming somewhere in the future, it's now. We often talk about hunger in terms of numbers, how many people we serve, how many pounds of food we distribute, but behind every number is a person carrying the weight of worry. Parents who quietly skip meals so that their children can eat, seniors choosing between food and medicine, families who come to our distributions in tears in their eyes, ashamed, anxious, and exhausted from just trying to hold it together. That constant stress takes a toll, not just on bodies, but on the minds and spirits. It's hard to plan for a future when your present is consumed by fear and uncertainty. And as we head into the holidays, a time that should bring joy and connection, too many families and neighbors are feeling despair instead. Our mission at the Food Shuttle has always been to feed, teach, and grow. Feeding meets the immediate need, but teaching and growing are about restoring hope, rebuilding confidence that tomorrow can be a better day. Now is not the time for blame. It is the time for partnership. I am grateful that the food banks have a place at the table to ensure the voices of communities that we serve are heard and are a part of the strategies to move us all forward. We stand ready to work with our state and federal leaders to find both a pathway that protects the health and dignity of all North Carolinians. Because hunger is not just the absence of food, it's the absence of a peace of mind. And at a time where pleading to humanity of others can feel like it has little impact, I still believe that the best of us is yet to be revealed. And it will be revealed in the opportunities that we create collectively together. So thank you.
I'm very appreciative of Ron, of his team, of the volunteers who let them do great work. But as he just said, and I want to emphasize, there is no way that our nonprofits are going to be able to pick up the slack if this actually goes through. They will be completely overwhelmed. Food pantries, churches, and nonprofits do great work, but they cannot scale up to meet the need of 600,000 kids who will not have enough to eat starting next week. This is the deliberate precipitation of a major hunger crisis. It's unlawful. We're going to do everything we can to fight it. Are there any questions?
Mr. Attorney General, where was this filed, and can you just kind of give us the highlights of what it's seeking?
Yeah, it was filed in Massachusetts. You're going to get a copy of the complaint. It's being filed as we speak. There are two specific allegations, a violation of the SNAP Act itself, as well as the Administrative Procedure Act.
As this is being filed, what, if any, action comes of this? Because we're looking at that Saturday deadline. Since it's been filed, does that delay that? Is it just something they're going to have to respond to by a certain time period? I think for folks who are SNAP recipients and are hearing this news, what should they be taking away from this?
We are on the clock because of the November 1st deadline, which, by the way, we found out about all of a few days ago. But it's why we haven't just filed a lawsuit. We've also requested a TRO, a temporary restraining order. So in short, we are asking the court to act with emergency speed to meet this emergency. I think there's a very good chance that we get a favorable ruling that puts this on hold relatively soon. I hope that it happens before November 1st. There is some chance of that theoretically, but we are asking for the court to act as quickly as possible given the circumstances.
Were you informed directly of the November 1st deadline, or you saw it on the USDA website?
We found out the same time the rest of the country found out. And by the way, one more point about that. This is a reversal of course from what we heard from the department just within the span of this shutdown. On September 30th, they sent a letter saying, hey, we got a plan, and the plan involves tapping this emergency fund if the shutdown requires it. We understand that's what Congress gave us this money to do. Last week, they reversed course and said, never mind. So not only was this unlawful and wrong, but it was a rug pull on the entire country.
Could you maybe speak to the precedent here as far as what's happened in past shutdowns?
That's a good point. There is precedent for using these emergency funds for these kinds of emergencies. We've seen WIC emergency fund get tapped in a previous shutdown. We have seen the SNAP emergency fund get tapped when there's an appropriations shortfall. So there is very clear precedent. You can't use the emergency fund to create a whole new program. We all agree with that. But that's not the issue here. It's the emergency fund for the program itself. I mean, at a certain point, folks, let's just put our common sense hat on. Congress gave SNAP an emergency fund, and this is an emergency. Of course they should use the emergency funds for this emergency.
I one maybe for Jonathan. If this lawsuit isn't successful, or if the reserve fund gets spent down, what options does the state have? What are you guys trying to do, or not do? What could happen here?
We need the federal funds in order to push the benefits out to the SNAP recipients, and we are committed to turning that around as soon as absolutely possible, and we're ready to go once the USDA releases funds.
So there's no state option?
I think with any entity that receives federal funds of any kind across the state, they've been doing contingency planning for weeks, and you do an evaluation of every individual federal funding stream to see what runway and pathway you have and what available resources you have, and if that runway is really short, or is there any way to mitigate or shift temporarily to another funding source. Unfortunately, the size and scope of this program is one that avenue is not really available to us.
DHHS mentioned yesterday they don't believe they'll have funding for WIC benefits past early November. Does this legal action have anything to do with the claims made by DHHS regarding WIC benefits?
No, but we are on guard against that, and it is absolutely essential that we continue to fund WIC.
I'd like to ask Mr. Pringle something. Yes. Yeah, I'm sure people want you to come up here. Could you just tell us a little bit about your organization? How many people you help on a month, per month? And I assume many of them, most of them, rely on these benefits.
Many of them rely on these benefits, and we're on average serving about 30,000 individuals across our 7 counties alone. And that number is even higher when you think about the number of service episodes and the frequency that these individuals come to our food pantries. And so at this time, it's really about everyone doing their part. Food banks are not going to be able to meet this particular need, and without that safety net, we have to make tough choices on what programs we continue to support. No one wants to make a decision on whose child gets to eat. And so we are really looking forward to being able to suspend these actions and ensure that this support and safety net remains in place, especially going into the holidays.
Just to give you another number, because you haven't had a number, this is $230 million a month to North Carolina, to give you some sense of scale here. We have 11 counties in which at least 1 in 4 people in that county relies on SNAP. 1 in 4 kids across the state and across the country rely on it. We have 11 counties in which 1 in 4 people. It's a massive scale. Anything else? If not, then I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. John, please.
All right, once again, you heard there from North Carolina leaders, including the Attorney General Jeff Jackson, speaking on this multi-state lawsuit against the USDA for the failure to release $6 billion in contingency funds that Jackson says would help prevent folks in North Carolina and other states from going hungry once SNAP benefits get suspended in November amid the ongoing government shutdown. More on the topic to come here. We also will be talking politics on the Charlotte level in just a couple of minutes, so stay with us here on Live Impact News. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. As we mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit of Charlotte politics as we've got early voting underway through the rest of the week and Election Day itself coming up next Tuesday. We've got a pretty competitive race in District 6 in Charlotte, and we know this was the seat that became vacant with Tarek Bakari moving on to a federal position. We've got his wife, we see Krista Bakari running for the seat now, as well as a Democrat, Kimberly Owens. There was actually a forum for folks to hear from the candidates today. Krista Bakari did not show up for this forum. However, Kimberly Owens did. So let's listen into that forum.
With taxes. I know that there are efforts in place to help them. Luana Mayfield has spoken so eloquently about some of the programs that she's put forward to help people repair their aging homes. Truth be told, what I'm seeing in my own neighborhood in Montebello Crossing is that these homes are being ripped down. They're tearing them down. I had a house look just like mine, a $3.8 million house went up right next to it. So I hear that, I know that that is happening. The argument is that developers won't build them if people won't buy them. Again, hearkening back to what Luana has said, the education of a community, if they do have a homeowners association, helping them know how to enforce their covenants so that they are able to keep out certain sizes of homes or certain dwelling unit styles, or just really helping them keep the character of their neighborhood. But it is a problem. We have a lot of money coming in here, and those folks do seem to want to buy big houses. And that's capitalism. That's how that's working. And so I don't have a great answer other than hoping to connect people with the resources that keep people able to pay their taxes, keep people able to repair their homes. And those are all things that I know that the city is doing to try to alleviate that stress.
Jackie. Hello, Kim. Hello. I was looking at the numbers that had come into the Board of Elections as of this morning. And in your area, more than 2,500 folk have voted at South Park, which is almost 10 times some of the other primary sites. I just mentioned that, but I wanted to know, tell us about your early years to get you to the thinking that you have today.
So I'm originally from Illinois. I'm the first generation in my family to graduate from college. My dad worked in a steel mill and my mom worked in retail. My grandfather worked in a steel mill, and his dad before him was a failed entrepreneur and a failed farmer as well. I am really such a beneficiary of upward mobility that my kids don't necessarily see anymore. I mention them again because they are my why, because so much of what I saw when I moved here in 1994, when I moved here in 1994, I made $57,000. I was a graduate of law school. I was able with that $57,000 to get my own apartment, to have a car, to have car insurance, to have health insurance, to service debt on my student loans, because I had gone to Northwestern University and then to Chapel Hill for law school, had a lot of student loans. I was able to do all of that on that income, and Charlotte just seemed like this magical place where anything could happen and I could be a success. I struggled at first in my first couple of law firms because there was a lot of generational wealth. And not coming from that, I didn't feel like I belonged. And so, the first few years here, I did feel a bit like an outsider. But as time evolved and opportunities evolved and I progressed through my law firms and then into in-house, I've been able to have these children who, all I thought I had to do was send them to college and they'd be set, and now they're back and they're not thriving, they're not launching, they're not experiencing those opportunities. One of my sons makes literally $3,000 more a month than I did when I moved here in 1994. A year, when I moved here in 1994. So he's in his high school bedroom and he's got a good job, but it is just not enough. So our wealth our wealth disparity and our wage gaps have really colored my impressions of what opportunities are available to our young kids when they try to move back to Charlotte now. But the Charlotte, for me, it felt magical. You know, it was the biggest city I'd ever lived in. It still is. It just had such potential, and I want to see that again. I want to experience that through their eyes again. But I thank you for the question. But yeah, I grew up, I'm just a Midwestern girl. I've lived here, moved here in 91, and then to Charlotte in 94.
I have a question. My question is, as you have been around as a candidate, and you've been around the other candidate that's running against you in District 6, what have you picked up from the conversations or from what you've heard that they will be sharing with the community to encourage people to vote for them, that you think that you should possibly elaborate more on?
To be fair, I've had very few opportunities where I've been around her. This week, while we've been standing out in the rain trying to get people to vote for us, has really been the longest period of time that Krista and I have been together. I do take from what I've heard her proxies and her advocates say when they've been out there as well, is there's a very big focus on safety. And the murder of Irina Zaruska and some of the calls by the FOP for the National Guard have been reposted and articulated by my opponent as being, potential good avenues for us as we look at public safety. I disagree vehemently with that. I think anyone in this room, you know that the National Guard is not a civilian police force. That is not appropriate. So I push back on that. I've also heard, her say that her experience set is greater than mine because she has served as a constituent coordinator. I can't remember the terminology, but effectively she's been married to somebody on city council and has fulfilled a lot of his softer touch responsibilities that are, I guess, not his true north. I take issue with that only because, I really do not think that, being a spouse and supporting that spouse is something, that's something that all of us do. I don't know that it's something that really prepares you well for office. I appreciate that she helps him with his job. But I will say the hard skills are really where I want to draw the distinctions. So I've been a real estate attorney for 30 years. I've due diligenced $1 billion in transactions. I've done M&A. I've done a number of the things that do touch on what City Council does. In addition, I've also had those soft roles in the community where I've served my HOA. I started a nonprofit for our local school because they needed to raise funds for a playground that was ADA compliant. I have, served Council for Children's Rights, representing kids facing expulsion from school. I've done all of those soft things that give you insights into the needs of the community. I've done all of that. I've been able to get a stop sign where one was needed in a neighborhood in South Park. I've done those things, but in addition to that, I've also honed my skills as an attorney. And so I would challenge that there is a clear incumbent. She hasn't so much as called herself an incumbent, but it's definitely been a sense that she's already going to hit the ground running because of her husband. And I challenge that. I don't find that persuasive.
Okay, Winston.
Good morning. So I wanted to ask you about being a representative. Well, if you were the representative of District 6, what would your magic wand ideal structure look like for the people who live, I believe, in Cedar Knoll, Savannah Woods, and there's one more Olivian property that is very nestled in a lot of wealth? How would you optimize their lived experience?
I think that we have been able over the last few years to widen the lens on what community means and how to incorporate more mixed income housing. So my intention would be to have more linkages between those communities and the communities that surround. We've got the loop that now goes around South Park. I've had people say, I want access to these greenway spaces. I want access to these amenities. I think you need to have more linkages between communities that do have mixed income housing, more linkages to the amenities of South Park. I think that lifts all of us up to have those sorts of spaces be shared spaces and not be spaces that are just uniquely designed for a particular 1 mile radius of South Park Mall. I think we can all benefit from that. I think we also need to look very closely at our workforce housing. There are so many people who work in District 6 who cannot afford to live in District 6. We need to be more thoughtful about what success looks like in terms of how we are incorporating community, be it our police officers or our teachers or folks, again, who serve very well that community and would benefit immensely from having more housing that was available to them. So my best answer is just to establish linkages and to not have these isolated corridors or pockets of folks who live in Libyan housing or any of the other opportunities that are going up there.
Robert Collins.
Good morning again. You say that you did vote for the highway road tax. Most people in this room, from what I've heard, don't agree with it. What reason could you give the people in this room to say that they should vote for it?
I'd like to rephrase the question a little bit. I'm not going to tell you how you should vote. I came in here knowing that I was walking into a room of people who did not vote for it or will not vote for it, and I knew that I did. The reason I did, and I was back and forth with it, I took a lot of my comfort ultimately from the Black Political Caucus, the forum that I attended here, where the Black Political Caucus went through their 6 reasons. Now, I've been told since then that I was hoodwinked by those persuaded, I should not have been as persuaded as I was, but I got a lot of comfort out of it, but I was already inclined towards it because I'm trying to think with the mindset of what is good for District 6. And what is good for District 6 right now is for people to be able to retain jobs in District 6. And I talked to a really brilliant woman who owned a hotel in District 6. And she had a mid-level manager who was about to fire some employees who just were not consistently coming to work. They just could not get there on time. And instead of saying something to this manager, she said, let's go on a field trip tomorrow. And she took her and the rest of the human resources folks on a tour of Charlotte by bus all day. And after that, they got back to the hotel and they're like, yeah, we're not firing anybody. They appreciated through that experience that they were putting their lived experience onto another person's body, and it wasn't fair because these folks had absolutely no control. A lot of folks, either if they've got a vehicle, maybe it doesn't run or whatever, and they could not consistently arrive at work on time. And I love that example of leadership and of somebody taking a managerial moment and really showing somebody instead of just telling somebody what the constraints are. So I took from that and other businesses that I talked to who also similarly said, my people can't live here, but they need to be able to get to work. And so I thought, okay, well, this is good for 6, but is it good for the city? And then again, I did take some comfort from the Black Political Caucus. Probably the thing that was the most persuasive to me, and you can disabuse me if I was misled, but the education component. My kids all went to magnet school. And I said it before, they had the great good fortune of having a mom and a dad with a car who could drive them to the shuttle stop so that they could get the opportunities to go into Randolph Middle School. And Randolph Middle School's IB program absolutely, unequivocally prepared them for success at Myers Park IB and then for college. And I don't know, they probably would have been fine at their local school, which was Carmel, but I wanted them to have a broader experience. I wanted them to go someplace else. And a lot of kids don't have that opportunity. And so I did take some persuasion from the BPC that they felt as though this transit opportunity would enable more kids to access some of the programs, both during school and then after school programs, where they're not able to get to and fro. So that's how I made my decision, but it's one vote. I have no other responsibility right now other than if I am elected to serve with honor and purpose when we select these people. I did throw my hat in the ring for the Transit Authority because I am skeptical of how those dollars are going to be used. I hope to bring that healthy skepticism to my leadership if I'm not elected as a District 6 representative. I hope I'll be on the Transit Authority.
Okay, Winston.
So going back to the South Park area, it seems like such a microcosm of what Charlotte's going through with the growth. And given that you have been in District 6, I believe, since the 90s, with Montebello Crossing, and your experience with the houses going up beside you, where is that line between growth and optimization for your current residents? Like, what would you say to your MSDs and MSAs for the trajectory of South Park? Like, you can take advantage and leverage the boom, but you know the infrastructure will have its insecurities. Where do you stand?
All right, folks, we'll get back to this District 6 forum if we can. Meantime, I want to take you out to Los Angeles, as we've got in about 10 minutes or so. We're going to do that, and it didn't. I think we just missed the shot. But we've got a bump shot basically outside of Dodgers Stadium, where we've got a reporter who's going to give us a report, we think, maybe in the next couple of minutes. Do you want to go out there? Let's just show it so folks can see it. Really coming off of a marathon day last night. Are we getting some audio from him? I'm sorry. All right, let's listen in. All right, sorry, we mistimed that for you, but anyways, we've got Dodgers up in the series 2-1 facing Toronto Blue Jays, as we mentioned, coming off of a marathon night last night. 18 innings, game set to start at 8 o'clock our time. And as we mentioned, Dodgers are leading in that series, so we'll see how things transpire. This evening, as we mentioned, we've got that shot just outside of the stadium, so we'll see if there's any sort of activity. If the reporter starts speaking again or we see anything interesting, we'll definitely bring that to you here on Live Impact News. All right, I think we're good to head back to the District 6 forum and listen back in as folks are asking questions of one of the candidates here, the Democrat Kimberly Owens.
Neighborhood, really couching them as safety issues, particularly if you're not providing any parking for some of these structures, parking on the streets. What does that do to your street traffic? How does your public safety get down those streets in the event of a fire or an emergency? Really being more broad in our thinking about what we expect of our developers. And perhaps this won't make me a developer darling, but I believe that we should be able to expect more. Because people are already in these neighborhoods. You're not just de novo plopping down a neighborhood. I heard somebody the other day say to me, why don't we have more roundabouts? Roundabouts are wonderful, but roundabouts are really hard to do if you've already got an established neighborhood because they take so much real estate. They're hard to do, but we need to be thoughtful about our traffic patterns and just, again, the lived experience and the safety of the residents who remain. So I take a broader view of smart development.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Kim, you're doing a fantastic job in sharing. Jackie has a question? Okay.
I want to ask you, and I don't know if you know about single room occupancy here in the city. Can you just share with us, what your thoughts are regarding that?
Yeah, housing has been really front of mind. It's interesting that you asked me that question today because last night, yesterday's weather was just horrific. It wasn't fit for man or beast, and we were out there for hours, chasing boats. And yet, all I could think about was I wanted to get home and get into a warm bath and then get into my bed. And there was a gentleman out there who was homeless, and he, got some food from us, and we sat and talked to him for a while, and we tried to find him housing. We called around, called a couple places, got on a wait list here or there, and then we, of course, we're incorporating him in the conversation. I'll call him Tom. So we're incorporating Tom in the conversations. And we found a place we thought, and he's like, well, no, I can't go there because it's not safe. I can't go there because I know somebody who had everything stolen. I feel like occupancy is one bogey that we need to hit, but we also need to ensure and instill a sense of security in the people who are using it. We need to broaden the lens on the types of emergency housing that we're providing so that families can stay together. We need to broaden the lens on the types of housing so that are not expecting people to traipse all over the city, again, on our non-existent transit to try to access the places that they need to go. We need to be, I'd love it, we were talking about it as a Democratic group, I'd love it if somebody could call the Democratic Party and we have a social worker or somebody there who would say, hey, these are your resources, let me help you navigate this path, because this path is just going to get bumpier, I fear, over the next 3 years, you know, as our nonprofits are not able to fill this space, as they are, you know, losing their funding. You know, our faith communities, you know, the Faith and Housing Initiative that Luana Mayfield leads. I've been so impressed with the work of Caldwell Presbyterian, but I've been honestly a little depressed to see that there isn't a single District 6 church that is thrown in for that training on how to convert land into a higher purpose, convert unused land into either housing for or folks facing housing insecurity. So we've got a lot of challenges. But I do think that we need to not just think of it as a room is a room is a room. It needs to be a room and a space and a safe place for somebody. And so I think we need to try harder on what people actually need and incorporate them into the conversation. So I don't know what Tom did last night. I'm looking forward to seeing him today. I brought some food. We gave a bunch of stuff yesterday. You know, we're filling in the edges as humans. I mean, these are humans who need. So I would ask all of you, I guess, it's gonna get tough out there. And we just gotta do better. But I don't have a wand or a secret sauce for it.
Another question. You mentioned that the reason you voted for the tax mainly is because it's District 6. You're concerned about District 6. What about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Do you know where the transits are going to take place, where they're going to go, directions that everything's going to take place, and how concerned are you about my district, which may not be District 6?
I very clearly, I am trying to look at District 6 lens simply because I'm running for District 6 representation. In a normal process where I'm just as a voter, I would have been possibly more broad in my thinking. However, again, I was very comforted by the thoughts of others, and particularly the Black Political Caucus. Because if you look at the statistics as who is using busing, and I'm most excited about the money that's going to go towards busing, to be honest with you. The rail line, I think, has been something that has been promised multiple times, and we have not successfully complied with our visions there, and that's unfortunate. Again, I would not have put in for the Transit Authority if I thought that they couldn't use a skill set of somebody with planning experience and somebody with appreciation for zoning and somebody who is skeptical of the past failures. So I apologize for not having broadened my lens enough, but I really am trying to be very disciplined about District 6, and I'm trying to do the job of a council member and put my district first, appreciative of the fact that there are others who are taking hard stances and some folks who are not. I've heard some folks kind of ride that line up here, and I thought I would go ahead and tell you the truth that I voted for it. I could have told you that I was neutral, but I'm not neutral. I voted for it because I thought it was good for District 6, and I didn't think that it was a net negative for the other districts, provided it actually complies with its promises.
I'm gonna tell you, you are killing it. You are in the high seat, taking every question, unopposed. Thank you for your willingness to do this. Let me ask you a question, just in the idea of being so strongly District 6. What practices of equity look like to you voluntarily for District 6? How can you extend outside of those golden gates to reach out to other districts to say, hey, we could partner here, we could do these things to share resources and information to enhance, again, a lived experience for Charlotte overall, and to represent what, again, just that equitable attempt could be from District 6 to extend out.
I appreciate the description of the golden gates of District 6. It is funny, I am in District 6, but I am not of District 6, and it does give me a unique lens. The number of people who think that I grew up the way that I live now is very funny to me. Truth be told, if I do build this ADU in my backyard for my mother, it'll the nicest place she's ever lived. And that is heavy on me. The fact that, you know, we do have the amount of privilege that we have in District 6, it was always something that I raised my children with an appreciation for, that this is not how everybody lives, and this is not an entitlement, it is not an expectation of yours. I've had some really wonderful conversations, and I'm finding that I'm not weak. I think going into this race, I felt a little bit like I felt in that first law firm where I didn't belong, and everybody in District 6, you know, was generationally wealthy, and that's not actually true. There's a lot of folks in District 6 who think like I do and feel like I do, and do feel a responsibility to the rest of the city. I, again, have already expressed my disappointment that our churches are not yet aligned, but to be fair, some of them have been giving a lot of money to programs like Caldwell and their conversion of their Sunday school into 21 units for unhoused folks. So there are a variety of ways that I want to lift up opportunities for District 6 to lean in to the needs of the city in ways that are comfortable and in ways that are effective for them. And it may not look the same for everybody. Again, it may not be a church giving up its you know, acreage for housing in this moment in time. It may be an iterative process where we are looking at the congregation's values and assessing whether they have the skill sets necessary to provide wraparound services. Or maybe they are looking at having a senior center there. Maybe that's a baby step in a direction that helps the community outside of District 6. Adult daycares are, and my gosh knows my dad could have used one when my mom was caring for him. There are needs that maybe are things that I can help propel and ideas that I can share. As far as with the other districts, I've really been excited about the opportunity to work with a number of the other districts. Obviously, there's adjacency of 6 to 4 of the other districts. I have had good relationships so far with City Council, both the at-large and the district representatives, and would hope to continue to partner in ways that make sense for the folks who live in those corridors.
Thank you. You got Robert with a question.
See, I have a lot of questions today. I spend a lot of time in District 6. I'm a member of the JCC, and I know a lot of influential people in your area. First, I want to say thank you for your honesty and just saying, hey, I just look at District 6. I appreciate that. What I want to ask you is this. This is not the only forum you've done. This is not the only room that you're in. What was the most difficult question you've had to answer in other rooms?
Wow. I will say that this forum has been the most engaging, and even though I wasn't answering the questions, I've heard the questions asked of others, particularly the at-large and during the primary. This race has not had me at as many forums as I would like to have been, so largely this room right now, I mean, I don't want to pander, but some of these questions are actually the most challenging that I've had. I usually get a chance to do my stump speech, but because my opponent doesn't show up, there isn't as much engagement as there is today. You know, I was on Charlotte Talks, and you know, Mike Collins did ask some good questions about the use of the city's monies. I think some of the more difficult questions are along how would I have voted had I been at the table for this particular vote. So whether it's on the expenditure for the Panthers stadium improvements, or whether it's on Chief Jennings' settlement proceeds, all of those are very difficult for me to answer. In large part because as a lawyer, I really want to be fully informed and not just pop off with an answer, you know, I think this or I think that. And so I need to equivocate on those because I don't know what I don't know on those. And so I would say anything that's asking me to second guess the decision making of the folks who are currently on the dais is a difficult question for me. But it's unfortunately not one that I've been asked very often because we haven't engaged on this race very much.
Okay, I have a question. Okay. My question is, what have you done to try to cultivate a relationship with those that are serving, especially those that are at large, those that are serving the city council now? Have you tried to cultivate relationships with them to start just assuming that you will be voted in as a candidate for District 6?
I have been attending city council and sort of doing my shadow voting from the seats, you know, who I would align with, and I know that I've got some commonalities with a certain number of folks up there. Dante has been really open and very helpful with her advice. Luana and I have been multiple times, because we both have a commitment to the LGBTQ community. We've often been in shared spaces. Dimple introduced me to Hugh McCall, who I had met, you know, decades ago, but of course, you know, you didn't remember me. But, you know, she made some connections there. I do think it has helped me immensely to have as many good Democrats up there who are looking at this race and are hopeful. A number of them and a number of the people in this room. This is actually.
All right, folks, so there you saw just a bit of that candidate forum from District 6. And once again, the Republican in the race, Christopher Bakari, did not attend this forum. However, we were hearing from the Democrat, Kimberly Owens. Election night, of course, we'll have all that coverage for you on November 4th. That is next Tuesday. But early voting is still underway until the end of the week. We'll have much more for you after the break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. We do have some testimony we saw on Capitol Hill today regarding political violence, with some interesting takes in, as we mentioned, testimony, witnesses who say that they have firsthand experience with either being targeted or witnessing political violence in this country. We'll be back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to Live Impact News. Thanks so much for sticking with us. In a few moments, we will get to what we mentioned we would get to after this break that we just took, the testimony on Capitol Hill with the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on political violence in just a moment. Meantime, we want to draw your attention to a new shot that we've got coming into our feeds here. And we've got live looks for you from Tokyo, where we can see Air Force One standing by as the president is expected to depart Tokyo as he is on this multi-day trip to Asia, visiting multiple countries, just met with leadership in Japan, including the new Japanese Prime Minister. And we expect him to depart a little bit later this evening. Even later in the evening, after he departs, we know he'll be landing in Korea with a bilateral of the president there scheduled for him. So we'll have much more coverage of this if we are able to bring it to you. Oh, actually, look at Router 4, Brandon. We've got Marine 1 taking off. So actually, I think the wheels are in motion to get the president now from Tokyo. So what we would probably expect in this case, while we don't have the actual logistics of the trip, Marine 1 usually takes the president from more remote location or an area they can't fly out of, probably to directly the airport and Air Force One, after which Air Force One, the plane, as we showed you in the last shot, will depart for Busan, Korea. So there we can see the chopper taking off. All right, so we talked about the fact that there was a hearing earlier today on Capitol Hill. We've got that video queued up and ready to go. This is a Judiciary Committee hearing on political violence. Multiple witnesses here, including a Metropolitan Police officer, Daniel Hodges, who gives testimony about the experience of working during January 6th and the injuries sustained. So let's listen into that testimony.
To our constitutional order, I'll give my opening statement, then we'll go to the ranking member, and then after we might do a second round of opening remarks, introduce the witnesses, swear you guys in, and then get rolling with questions. For the past 15 months, political violence has been a constant fact of American life. We've seen arsons and bombings, armed ambushes and assaults, sniper attacks and mass shootings, riots, and violent mobs on our city streets. We've seen assassinations, we've seen murder, we've seen death. None of this is random. It's organized, coordinated political terror. The people behind this violence are not common street criminals. They're not driven by money or drugs or gangland turf disputes. They're determined, militant extremists who wield violence for political ends. They know that their vision would never win at the ballot box. So they've chosen terrorism instead. They know their ideas could not win in the marketplace of ideas, so they shoot up the marketplace. Last year, President Trump survived not one, but 2 assassination attempts. In Butler, Pennsylvania, he escaped a sniper's bullet by a centimeter in a split second. Only weeks later, in West Palm Beach, another would-be assassin camped out for 12 hours in the brush outside of Trump International Golf Club, armed with a loaded rifle, burner phones, a GoPro, hoping to finish the job. Less than 2 months later, a healthcare CEO was gunned down in cold blood on a New York street by a left-wing extremist who called his victim a parasite who had it coming. Within days, left-wing activists had made the murderer a folk hero. In California, they pushed a ballot measure named in his honor. A poll taken 10 days after the murder found that nearly half of very liberal Americans had a favorable view of the killer, whereas just 8% of very conservative Americans felt the same. Then came an all-out war on immigration and customs enforcement. Across the country, federal officers were hunted like prey. They were attacked, surrounded, ambushed, and shot at. Their facilities were firebombed. There were arrests for arson, for assault, for violent threats and doxing, but the violence continued to escalate. On July 4th, 11 members of an Antifa terror cell carried out a coordinated ambush on an ICE facility in Texas. They arrived in 2 vehicles, loaded with semi-automatic rifles, handguns, Molotov cocktails, body armor, and encrypted radios. Their gear was painted with the circle A for Antifa. They detonated fireworks to lure officers out into the open, and then opened fire and kept shooting until their guns jammed. One cop was struck in the neck and critically wounded while racing to respond. Just 3 weeks later, a transgender shooter entered a Catholic elementary school in Minneapolis and opened fire on hundreds of children while they prayed. Dozens were wounded. 2 little children, a 10-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy, were killed. The shooter marked his guns with slogans like, "Where is your God now?" and posted videos using an image of Christ for target practice. 2 weeks after that, Charlie Kirk was murdered while speaking to students in Utah. The killer told friends and family he did it because Charlie was full of hate. Social media exploded with gloating celebration. Thousands upon thousands of people, journalists, professors, and government employees could not contain their glee that a father of 2 young children had been gunned down in broad daylight. When Americans gathered to mourn him, they were attacked there too. In El Paso, an arsonist set fire to a church holding a vigil in his memory. A week later, a man opened fire into an ABC news station in Sacramento, just days after the network suspended Jimmy Kimmel's show. Police found anti-Trump writings in his car and a handwritten note that read, "Patel, Bongino, and Pam Bondi, they're next." And just last week, an anarchist radical was arrested for placing a $45,000 bounty on Pam Bondi, posting an image of the Attorney General with a sniper dot on her head. The caption read, "Wanted, dead or alive, preferably dead." A week after the ABC shooting, a sniper opened fire on an ICE facility in Dallas, killing multiple people. Investigators recovered shell casings etched with the words, "Anti-ICE." And this month, a man who flew across the country to murder Justice Brett Kavanaugh received a sentence of just 8 years. He brought a gun, ammunition, a knife, duct tape, and zip ties to kill a sitting Supreme Court justice in his own home while his wife and kids were present because he didn't like the way he might rule on gun control or abortion. This is the nature of political violence in America today. It's driven by a system far larger than the people who commit the act itself. We've seen this system in action. We have not forgotten what happened in 2020. 5 years ago, violent mobs burned and looted their way through our cities. The press called the riots mostly peaceful, though. Ivy League academics celebrated them as righteous acts of resistance. The wealthy corporations in the world donated billions to keep them going. Vice presidential candidates bailed rioters out of jail. Prosecutors declined charges. Judges released arsonists and anarchists just hours after their arrests. The same public health experts who banned funerals and shut down churches declared mass protests justified because racism is a public health crisis. Politicians reserve their outrage not for criminals torching police precincts, but for the officers trying to defend them. The largest cities in the nation slashed their police budgets by hundreds of millions of dollars, unleashing a deadly wave of violent crime on a scale not seen in decades, the largest single-year increase in murders in more than a century. The activists on the ground claim to be revolutionaries fighting the powers that be. But the truth is, they were backed by the full force of the ruling regime. The mobs that torch cities, the radicals who ambush ICE agents, the activists who terrorize judges at their homes, all of them are foot soldiers in the same regime. A regime whose foundational ideology is that we're born either as victims or oppressors, and is the duty of revolutionaries to impose their vision of equity upon us all. This sustained campaign of violence is explicitly and specifically political. It is motivated by a distinct and fanatical ideology, rabidly anti-American, anti-Western, and anti-civilization itself. It is a worldview that indicts the United States as an illegitimate nation born in evil. By now, most Americans have heard this language. It has dominated our public life for years. These are not fringe ideas any longer. They have not just been tolerated, but actively embraced, repeated, and amplified through the largest megaphones in our country. To my friends on the other side of the dais who may take offense with these categorizations, how often have we heard Democrats praise these radicals for their idealism? How many elected officials have called riots the language of the unheard? The violence stalking our streets today is a feature, not a bug. There is an evil, but consistent logic to it. It's the natural and logical result of the ideology itself. If the violent elements' ideals were so praiseworthy, then the system which obstructs their fulfillment is to blame. And why work within a blameworthy system for praiseworthy ends? To these people and this movement, the only acceptable goal is the destruction of the system and its leaders. The central idea of every revolutionary project is that utopia must be achieved through any means necessary. If you truly believe that Charlie Kirk is an existential threat to your safety, and you've bought into the nonsense that words are violence, then silencing him by any means could seem necessary. If you believe that mass migration is an inalienable right, then opening the floodgates to uncontrolled immigration, tearing down the border and attacking those who defend it might look like justice to you. If you believe that America was conceived in murder and built on stolen land, then you feel no moral obligation to respect and obey its laws. If you truly believe the police are the armed enforcers of racist oppression who indiscriminately murder innocent victims in the streets, then you might see violence against an officer as an act of brave resistance. When Charlie Kirk was murdered, one of his killer's bullets was engraved with the message, "Hey fascist, catch." But who taught him that Charlie Kirk was a fascist? Who convinced him, I should say, that Charlie's hate made his murder a righteous act? Who told him over and over again that people who believe what Charlie Kirk believed are threats to our democracy? He didn't invent that worldview. He learned it, as did each and every one of the arsonists, assassins, and militants who came before him. Perhaps the people in power who said these things didn't really believe them, but clearly some of the people who listened to them did. And now they are taking those ideas to their final logical conclusion. Enough. We are faced with only two paths. Either we confront this political violence and end it, or it will end us. And I can think of no better person to introduce this topic than the late Charlie Kirk himself. I'm going to show a quick video before we go to the ranking member of him speaking on this precise subject, and I hope everyone would listen closely and heed his warning.
Now on Thursday, more violence from the radical left, this time directed at Turning Point USA and their group on the campus of UC Davis. Here with more, Turning Point USA founder, CEO Charlie Kirk. It's interesting, we were texting, about a week ago, and I kept saying, you know, it takes a lot of courage for you and your group and these young kids to be setting up in these hostile environments on college campuses. And, you know, lo and behold, it's not the first time it's happened, but we'll show the video as you're speaking. Tell us everything that went on.
Yeah, it's shocking stuff, and it's a pattern now. We're seeing this happening on more and more campuses. So at the University of California, Davis, our brave Turning Point USA chapter was set to host Brandon Tatum as a Prove Me Wrong event. Goes up, sets a table. Anyone can go and have free speech and dialogue if they disagree. Antifa showed up, full masked, black outfits. They came in, took our gear, destroyed our tables, basically made the students had to flee, and the police did nothing to intervene, nothing whatsoever. Our courageous students had such such resolve and fortitude that after this incident happened, they regathered and tried to do the event still about an hour later, but it wasn't the same, of course. This is after one of our Turning Point USA students at University of Texas, Dallas, had a bike lock thrown at her and actually had to be hospitalized for this treatment. Sean, we are seeing a disturbing pattern from the radical left, and we have data to now support it. According to the National Contagion Research Institute, 48% of left-of-center respondents say that it's justified to murder Elon Musk. 53% say that it would be justified to murder President Donald Trump. There are ballot measures in California that are being measured by far-left activists that are being named, I should say, after Luigi Maggioni. We have to take a step back here and ask our question, what's really going on here? There's a deeper thing than just political disagreement. If you are on the front lines like our Turning Point USA students, you are potentially putting your safety, your well-being, and God forbid, your life in jeopardy for simply being a conservative on a college campus.
Ranking Member Welsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I just want to make it clear, I am absolutely horrified by political violence in this country. And Senator Schmidt, today, just now, but at a hearing last week or last month, you said, quote, political violence is always wrong, period, full stop. It doesn't matter which side, in the name of any ideology or cause, it's wrong. And Senator Schmidt, I agree with you. It is wrong, and all of us must condemn every act of violence that tears at the fabric of our society and is absolutely, totally corrosive to our democracy. And I think us as elected officials on both sides of the aisle, we have a significant duty to engage and disagree, but with respect, unmotivated by hate. Our rhetoric matters, and we can reflect our commitment to representing our constituents aggressively, assertively, but without the kind of hatred that foments bad behavior. In political violence, involved in politics, when I was involved in the civil rights movement, and two of the people that I most admired in politics, Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, were both assassinated. And I unequivocally condemn Mr. Kirk's assassination, unequivocally. I know Mr. Knowles, you're very, very close to him. I know Senator Schmidt was very, very close to him. And I know millions of Americans were inspired by him. I condemn that. Let me be clear. I condemn that killing. I was also, just want to say this, the stakes are really too high for the American people and the health of our democracy. To use this hearing as an opportunity to demonize one side or the other. If all political violence is wrong, is evil, is corrosive, the debate about where there's more on one side or the other, I don't see how that helps us get anywhere. Politicizing violence with inflammatory rhetoric has real consequences. So all of us have to turn that temperature down, those of us who are in public office, those of us who are in public life. You know, one of the things that happens when we have a reaction that's political and demonize it as being one side or the other is there can be governmental action that then starts suppressing the rights of all of our citizens, whether on the right or on the left. And we've got that history in our country. The Alien and Sedition Acts made it illegal to criticize the government under the guise of national security. My predecessor, Matthew Lyon, Vermont congressman in 1797, went to jail because he criticized President Adams. That was wrong. He ran for re-election, and Vermonters responded by re-electing him from jail, standing up for his free speech rights. In the 20s, we saw the Palmer raids, and what happened there with illegal searches and seizures without arrest and without warrants, and other constitutional attacks on the rights of the organized labor and of everyday citizens, under the name of going after, quote, the far left. And of course, in the 50s, McCarthyism fueled a campaign of fear and prosecution against left-wing groups, and I put that in quotes, until the Supreme Court stepped in to ensure civil rights and civil liberties were guaranteed. You know, I was listening to Mr. Kirk, and I do believe what he did going on campuses to encourage dialogue was a good thing to do. That's what we should have, and there should be a civil reaction to that. But I'm worried that if we're just going to use the violence that we all abhor to get into an argument about whether it's more left or more right, we kind of lose the point that it's all to be condemned. So I'm willing to work with any and all of us to condemn political violence and renew our commitment to civility. And Mr. Chairman, he's not here, but I sent over to his office a resolution about civility that is just basic agreement to disagree, but not to use invective or hate at all in our discourse. So my view, we can't stop the discussion by having it focus on whether it's left or right wing, not to leave that unexamined, but it has to be wholly and completely condemned. And I look forward to hearing from our witnesses about your suggestions and how we as a country can do better. Are you going to go? And I yield to Senator Lee. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank each of you for being here. I look forward to hearing your testimony. I'm also very grateful to Senator Schmidt, Ranking Member Welch, and those who put together this hearing, working with them. Violence for the purpose of achieving political ends in the United States of America is itself un-American. It's something that is anathema to who we are as a people, and it must be universally condemned and should be regarded as an unthinkable relic of societies that manifestly lack the rule of law, because it is. Our republic has regrettably become infected by a type of ideological cancer, one that tends to excuse even the most heinous acts so long as they can be said to achieve or somehow advance politically favored causes. Now, because of the way our news media tends to lean and a number of factors, those are often leftist causes that are embracing this. If they weren't, if it happened the other way, the media would serve as a check on that. The media doesn't always serve as a check on that when it comes from the left, because very often a number of voices within the media tend to agree with those odds. And I think that's part of how we get to the point where such a high percentage of those who identify themselves as part of the left are willing to say that murder of President Trump is morally justifiable. And other polls have come out since Charlie Kirk's assassination that show that trend getting worse, not better, just in the last few weeks. For examples of this alarming trend, one need look no further than the mostly peaceful burning of various American cities throughout the so-called Summer of Love in 2020, or the coddling of pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic mobs by university administrators just in the last year or two. And even the disgusting attempts to rationalize, excuse, and in many cases even praise the cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk through grotesque distortions of his past public statements and otherwise. This must end. Today, this hearing gives us a real chance to reflect upon and confront this very disturbing and building trend within our society. It's not enough to state that political violence is wrong. We must expose it, call it out where it exists, and root out the forces that tend to enable it. Now, to those who would cite the First Amendment somehow in defense of actions that cannot be defended on their own merits, let us be very clear. Violence is not protected speech. Neither is incitement to violence or funding of violence or facilitation of violence, any more so than a conspiracy to commit violent acts would be protected by the First Amendment. These things are not. They are analytically distinct, legally, constitutionally distinct from speech. They're not covered by the First Amendment. Indeed, the preservation of free speech itself depends on our ability to shield peaceful discourse from those who would silence dissent through any form of violence. Look, modern American society is the greatest civilization the world has ever known. Many on the other side of the aisle have decided that They ought to repeatedly engage in inflammatory, sometimes irresponsible rhetoric that creates permission. Sort of establishes a permission structure, you might say, for violence directed at our civil institutions. As the Trump administration works tirelessly to safeguard Americans from this wave of criminal, illegal aliens that have come through over the last 4.5 years, many Democrat leaders have fought back tooth and nail, describing federal law enforcement as, quote, a quote, modern-day Gestapo, as slave patrols, as thugs, and as a collective terror force. Despite multiple assassination attempts against Trump, it was and remains today fashionable in leftist circles to compare President Trump to Hitler and smear his supporters as fascists. What has been the result of this? Well, across the country, ICE agents have been under attack, personally, not just as a group. At an ICE facility in Texas, officers were attacked, with one even being shot in the neck. Investigators later found evidence of left-wing anarchist and anti-government ideology, anti-ICE slogans, Antifa imagery, and online discussions specifically targeting federal agencies. And yet again, much of the left either ignored the story altogether or blamed the government for provoking the attack, and leftists in the media, meanwhile, did at best nothing to stop it, and in other cases, tended to foment it. This violence toward the executive branch is not itself isolated. In 2022, a California man boarded a plane to Maryland with a pistol, with ammunition, and with a fairly distinct plan. His goal? To assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh because he disagreed with the leaked ruling in the Dobbs case that would go on to overturn Roe v. Wade. He disagreed with that ruling, therefore he decided he had to kill this justice. He was consumed by far-left ideology and the belief that violence is justified somehow when our system does not result in the outcomes desired by the left. He later told investigators that he wanted to, quote-unquote, give his life by killing Brett Kavanaugh himself. That is not activism. That is radicalism. That is extremism. It is driven by the same ideology that calls violent protest resistance and dressing it up in as many euphemisms as people can find. Shockingly, some leftists suggest almost...
Folks, we're going to pivot away briefly from this Senate Judiciary hearing on political violence to take you to some live images right now from Japan. As we can see, President Trump is departing Marine One and is en route to Air Force One. This is going to take him to South Korea from here, where we know the president is going to get onto his final leg of his Asia trip that's been underway throughout the last several days. Of note, we'll see the president with his high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping and South Korea's Lee Jae-myung. And we know trade will likely be a discussion here, as that is kind of the big topic and the big discussion as we see U.S. and Chinese relations playing in the forefront of how the tariff situation will go. So there we can see the president now getting on to Air Force One. As we mentioned, this is set to take him to South Korea. There's also going to be a larger meeting to follow as well. In addition to that meeting with the Chinese president and leader of South Korea, there's an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit that's going to take place as well. So likely more on that to come in the coming hours and the coming couple of days on that front. So there you see. President inside Air Force One at this point. Doors are closing behind him, and we'll probably sit on this shot for just a little bit longer. And we do have, of course, a commercial break coming up in just a few moments, but we're going to leave you with this for just a second. We'll be back in 2 minutes, folks, likely to rejoin either with this shot again, depending on what's going on, or more from that hearing, which is underway from earlier today regarding political violence. All right, you're watching Live Impact News, folks. I'm Vanessa Rufus. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to Live Impact News. We'll show you one last shot here of Air Force One in Japan as President Trump is set to depart for South Korea in just a few moments. You can see they've just moved away the staircase and closed up all the doors, so the departure should be imminent. As we mentioned, this is the final leg of a multi-country visit over the last several days, where the president is set to have a meeting one-on-one with the leader of China as well as South Korea. Pretty high stakes meeting, if you will, as we know that tariffs have been a very hot topic as far as relations between U.S. and China go. There's also the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit that will take place in South Korea while the president is there. So with that, we're going to turn back to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Hearing on political violence will probably, for the next several minutes, pop up our little box in the bottom right corner of your screen so you can continue to watch Air Force One as it eventually is going to take off.
A very distinguished career. You serve as America First Policy Institute's Executive Vice President, Chief Strategy Officer, and Chair of AFPI's Homeland Security Immigration. And I also understand prior to that, you were Acting Secretary of Homeland, Acting Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And during your time at DHS, you successfully navigated an incredible number of global and domestic challenges to the nation's security, including COVID-19, civil unrest, numerous border and immigration crises, and historic natural disasters and threats to global aviation security. And understand, too, that you serve now as president and founder of Wolf Global Advisors. Welcome. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Schmidt, Ranking Member Welch, members of the subcommittee, for the opportunity to testify today. Political speech and violence should never go hand in hand. I'm here today because I've seen this play out firsthand over the last several years and certainly during my time in government service. Let me be clear, I support those who lawfully exercise their constitutional rights, but when speech turns to violence, we must hold those committing violence accountable. The increase in politically motivated violence over the last several years has been driven largely by radical left-wing extremist groups and individuals that believe violence is a legitimate means to achieve political goals. A recent analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies shows that, quote, left-wing violence has risen in the last 10 years, and left-wing incidents in 2025 are on track to reach 30-year highs. A recent Rutgers University poll found that 55%, over half of the respondents of left of center, said it would be somewhat justified to murder President Trump, and 48% said the same about Elon Musk. According to another recent poll, 1 in 4 people on the far left believe that violence can be justified. That is 1 in 4. The data paints a disturbing picture that some on the left, especially younger adults, are increasingly supportive of violence as a form of protest. In 2020, as Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, I witnessed 100 consecutive nights of violence in Portland, Oregon. Every night, hundreds of violent anarchists surrounded the Hatfield Federal Courthouse. They hurled commercial-grade fireworks, sledgehammers, concretes, and even IEDs at our federal officers. They set fire, they vandalized property, and assaulted law enforcement. Their goal was not peaceful protest. It was destruction, coercion, and intimidation. At the time, I pleaded with local officials, including the governor and the mayor there in Portland, to help protect our officers, and time again, they refused to act. They chose politics over public safety. The result was more than 280 injuries to law enforcement officers and millions of dollars of damage to federal property and to local businesses. Back then, we saw public figures attacking federal law enforcement officers, calling them stormtroopers, Gestapo, and thugs. Comparing American law enforcement to Nazi Germany was irresponsible, reckless, and dangerous then, as it remains so today. Unfortunately, this disgusting rhetoric and behavior has only intensified. Once again, we're seeing violent attacks against law enforcement officers, and again, public figures are describing them as Nazis. The difference between 2020 and now, however, is that the Trump administration knows what to expect and is fighting aggressively to hold these violent offenders accountable. The administration has rightfully designated Antifa as domestic terrorists, has began a whole-of-government investigation into the financing and resourcing of this group, and has charged Antifa members with providing material support for terrorism. And despite what the mainstream media insists, groups like Antifa are not disorganized. They are increasingly organized, funded, and networked. They plan online, they operate anonymously, and execute in ways that make detection difficult. Make no mistake, their lack of structure is not a feature. It is a feature, not a bug. And it is designed to evade accountability and prosecution. Critics argue because they have no formal leadership, they shouldn't be treated as domestic terrorists. I believe this completely misses the point. This decentralized model mirrors what we have seen from jihadist networks, cyber criminals, and other criminal groups. Their lack of a hierarchy makes them more dangerous. This past summer, the American people witnessed multiple anti-fascist inspired attacks and threats on law enforcement, journalists, and civilians. This includes threats against ICE officers, other government officials, and even Attorney General Bondi just yesterday. Tragically, this also includes the sickening assassination of Charlie Kirk. I want to state this as plainly as I can. Enforcing immigration law, laws passed by Congress almost 60 years ago, is in no way, shape, or form fascism. Every sovereign nation has a right to choose who is allowed to legally enter the country. Throwing around words like fascist and Nazi not only cheapens history, but it fuels increasing hostility towards law enforcement, journalists, and ordinary citizens. Rise in political violence presents a grave threat to our constitutional order and rule of law. The federal government has a duty and a responsibility to respond. We must continue to give law enforcement the tools and the resources they need, allow ICE to operate safely in courthouses and jails across the country, increase penalties for those that dox federal officers, and expand joint task forces to dismantle. We owe it to the families who have lost loved ones, including Erica Kirk and others who continue to grieve, to ensure that their calls for accountability are answered and that our nation restores the respect for law and order. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. By the way, our chairman has had to go vote, and I'm going to have to go do that after I introduce Mr. Braniff. Mr. Braniff is the Director of Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab at American University, where he's working on research and programming to prevent violent extremism, targeted violence, and the drivers of polarization in American society. I also want to note that he's a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and served as a company commander in the U.S. Army. Mr. Braniff.
Chairman Schmidt, Ranking Member Welch, distinguished senators, thank you for your leadership on this critical issue and for the opportunity to testify today. 26 years ago, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. I've spent my career honoring that oath as an Army officer, a terrorism researcher, and leading prevention programs at the Department of Homeland Security. It's a lifelong commitment to protect kids and schools, families and faith communities, public spaces and workplaces, and the democratic institutions and freedoms our founders gave us. This isn't about politics or party for me. It never has been. I'm here representing a community of like-minded practitioners, law enforcement, mental health, educators, veterans, who work every day to prevent violence before it destroys families and communities. We're united by a simple belief: targeted violence is preventable, and American communities deserve better than waiting for the next attack. We should all condemn targeted violence. It's tragic, unethical, and illegal. I want to start by acknowledging the threats, the loss, and the fear that too many Americans and too many elected officials have experienced. But we should also not mistake the blame game for advancing solutions. Solutions must be based on data and evidence. Solutions must focus on preventing political violence in the first place, instead of reacting after the damage has been done. And solutions must reinforce our constitutionally protected freedoms, not erode them. To inform policymaking, Congress legislated that the executive branch provide data on terrorism and targeted violence. DHS contracted with START at the University of Maryland to produce the T2V data set, although the administration abruptly canceled funding in March. START data demonstrate clearly that violent events do not fit neatly into any one ideological category, and that there has been an alarming increase in attacks and credible plots in the United States, including over a 2,000% increase in mass casualty plots since the early 1990s. We average more than 2.5 attacks and credible plots per day in the U.S., and over 50% of them succeed. They occurred in over 1,200 U.S. towns and cities. This year, compared to last year, terrorism events are up 67% and fatalities are up nearly 150%. Americans are dying from ISIS-inspired, white supremacist, anti-Semitic, anti-government, anti-vax, anti-law enforcement, and nihilistic attacks. So these data highlight three challenges that we need to solve for. The volume problem. With 2.6 events per day, we are at risk of accepting targeted violence as inevitable. It is not. It is preventable. The structural gap problem. These plots succeed 55% of the time. The structural gap is due to appropriate limitations placed on criminal justice investigations to protect privacy, civil liberties, freedom of speech, and freedom of association. So we can't fill the structural gap with criminal justice-only solutions and maintain the freedoms enshrined in our Constitution. And third, the reality is that targeted violence manifests in many different forms of terrorism, hate crime, and school shootings. Any approach that only addresses one manifestation will be both operationally ineffective and fiscally inefficient. At DHS, I led prevention programs that partnered federal resources with local teams, sheriffs who knew their counties, schools who knew their students, mental health professionals who knew their patients, pastors who knew their congregations, local Americans protecting local communities. This allowed us to engage in early interventions that addressed all of the challenges I mentioned. Volume, we supported nearly 1,200 interventions for people on the pathway to violence, 0 committed violence while in the program. We filled the structural gap and bridged to public safety. In 94% of the cases, the individuals received support from mental health professionals, social workers, or other helping professionals. 6% were referred to law enforcement. Most of the individuals, 70%, were not yet self-medicating on any one specific ideology when they came to us, just angry, isolated, and struggling. And yet, without indexing our programs on any one ideology, the intervention succeeded across all ideologies, making this approach both effective and cost-effective. Nearly 1,200 people at risk of hurting themselves and others. But before families had to bury loved ones, we invested in prevention instead. Political violence threatens our constitutional order, but not just the violence, also how we respond to it. Whether we choose to do what works, quietly investing in scaling up prevention efforts, or we feed political polarization that makes Americans less safe and erodes our Constitution. Americans deserve, and the Constitution demands, the former. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles is the celebrated host of The Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire, as well as the book club on PragerU. He has published 2 #1 national best-selling books, including Speechless, A History and Analysis of the American Free Speech Tradition. Michael has received numerous awards, including the Conservative Mind Award from the American Conservative Magazine and an honorary doctorate of Humane Letters from Ave Maria University. Michael is a graduate of Yale and has lectured at universities and research institutions around the world. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Schmidt, Ranking Member Welch, and all the members of this committee. The Ranking Member suggested that we condemn political violence, which surely we must all do, but then he suggested that we not try to pinpoint exactly which side the violence comes from. This seems to me confusing and misbegotten, as one cannot solve a problem if one does not know where the problem lies. In light of the murder of my friend Charlie Kirk by a leftist assassin, I am gratified to see that at least some members of our federal legislature are now confronting the consistent and escalating pattern of left-wing terrorism in the country. Lest I be accused of partisan invective, on September 23rd, no less an emblem of American liberalism than The Atlantic magazine published an article citing a recent study from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, admitting that the left is more violent today than the right. Less honest liberals, including members of Congress, continue to deny this fact. Democrat Congressman Seth Moulton, for example, reacted to Charlie's assassination by blaming the right. Congressman Moulton claimed of political violence in the United States comes from the right, while only 4% comes from the left. That claim struck me, as it probably does many of you, as suspect. So I looked into just a few recent examples that came to mind of prominent left-on-right violence. The Covenant School Massacre in Nashville, in which a trans-identifying shooter murdered Christian school children after outlining her ideological motivations. According to authorities, there was no ideological motive there. Go figure. The Black Lives Matter riots, overtly leftist demonstrations that left dozens of people dead and over $1 billion worth of property damage. Likewise, those failed to show up on registers of left-wing political violence. Even an attack by Antifa that targeted me personally, as well as conservative college students for our political views, appeared in official records and data sets as nothing more than obstructing law enforcement.
All right, folks, our time here on Live Impact is coming to a close in just a few moments. We want to thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we hope you keep it here on WCNC+. We, of course, have the news at 11 coming up in just a couple of hours, so have the very latest on all your headlines, local, national, and global then. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Vanessa Rufus.